This is a conversation with Paola Cruz. She's a yogini, certified yoga instructor, and a spiritual guide. She's one of the most prominent yoga instructors in Honduras who has now recently moved to New York City. In this conversation, we discuss what is yoga, what are the four classical parts of yoga, how she discovered it. We talk about the benefits of mindfulness and some useful exercises, habits, and routines that people can start incorporating to their daily lives. We also talk about the benefits of a Sattvic diet and science versus spirituality. This is no time. If you like what you see, then do hit subscribe on YouTube, follow on Spotify, or rate 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. This project continues to take a lot of my time, money, and efforts. If you'd like to see it continue, do consider making a donation on Patreon, Anchor. You can leave a gift on Instagram. If not through financial support, then do consider sharing these episodes, leaving your likes and comments. All forms of engagement, they really go a long way. For the forms of love and support, you can follow this channel on Instagram or Twitter, or follow me personally. And now, it is no time.
Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo, Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat, Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Shanti 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 Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. May this talk be guided by the many teachers and gurus that have been in our lives. Namaste.
Thank you, Paola, for that. Perfect segue into the first question. Around 15 years ago, you were a student of retail management and marketing when in your sophomore year, you stumbled across this yoga asana class, and that was your first formal introduction to yoga. Many years later, when you moved to New York City to become a jewelry designer, when you started to get frustrated with that line of work, yoga came back into your life once again. When it comes to falling in love with yoga, how important is the timing, do you think, in your life? Do you think you would have gravitated towards yoga with as much intensity and passion if it had come to you at a different point in life? Let's say when you were much younger or much earlier, when you were not as frustrated with your line of work? Or do you think it all clicked because just when you were looking for a way out, yoga came through with all the answers?
Well, throughout our lives, we fluctuate in our emotional state depending on our experiences and what it is that we have learned at different points in our life. So things click differently at different times. In my personal experience, I, as a child, was already very interested in Eastern philosophy and specifically in India. Even though growing up in Honduras, I knew nothing about yoga because it was not something that was available then. But I had that curiosity from childhood. So once I arrived in university and I did see yoga as an option for one of my electives, I was instantly drawn to it. It felt like something that I knew I had to do. And so at that point in my life, it was introduced to me as the form of asana or the postures. And the class was a vinyasa class, a faster flowing asana class. Yeah. And at that point, that resonated deeply with me because I had always been very active. I played volleyball in high school and I went to the gym. I liked to run. I liked to hike. And so that integrated well with my lifestyle at the time. I don't really know if my first introduction would have been one of the slower asana like yin yoga or meditation if I would have been ready at that time. But the way that it was introduced to me then really helped me to develop a connection to it at the moment in time.
In a way, tapped into your interest into sports and physicality, and that was your introduction into it, and that was a much better gateway, like you mentioned, like in case you had gone into more of a meditative side of yoga, maybe at that point might have not clicked. Fantastic. You brought up something very interesting where you said that even when you grew up in Honduras, even though you didn't have as much exposure to Eastern philosophy, a certain part of you was like attracted to it or gravitated towards it. And the moment you came across yoga, something clicked. What do you think that is? I'm always fascinated by something like this, where even though you're not surrounded by these experiences, the moment you see it, it's almost like love at first sight and something clicks. Do you have an intuition about what happens?
Well, yoga is something that is innate to us. So it's more of a remembrance. And some of us, depending on, what we've been through in the past, and I personally believe in that the soul lives on and we go on through lives. So it's just something that felt very familiar to me. I couldn't explain it, and it's still very difficult to explain how that familiarity really works. But in essence, yoga, or the state of union, of being in harmony, is something that we naturally crave. It's something that we naturally want as humans, to be in a state of balance, which we're constantly seeking in different ways.
You brought up the state of union. We spoke about how you were introduced to yoga and this calling of sorts that you had. For people who are not familiar with yoga, they're completely in the dark. So let's define yoga. The Bhagavad Gita says that yoga is a journey of the self, through the self, to the self.
Mm-hmm.
The word yoga comes from the Sanskrit word for union. You have just described it as a state of harmony. So let's expand on that definition a bit more for people who are not familiar with yoga. What is yoga? What is the state of harmony, and how do you achieve it?
So as you mentioned, yoga means union, right? In short, it's this state of union or harmony that arises from the interaction of two things. We can't have a union if we don't have at least two ends to it, right? That will create this union. So this can be anywhere from the union of your body and the mind. It can be the union of the Atma, or the soul, and the Paramatma, or the super soul. It can be the union or harmony between the human being and what we perceive as nature itself. So there's many degrees of forming or arriving at this union. Mm-hmm. But in essence, yoga is a pathway that is also the destination. So it's a very abstract way of putting it, but in itself is a way of understanding who we truly are, and knowing that what we are is transcendent, and it is different than what we usually think that we are. So that is really what yoga is.
What do you mean by it is transcendent and different from? Can you expand on that?
So, if someone asks you to describe yourself or to mention who you are, like, people normally would respond, "Oh, I'm Paola, I'm from Honduras. My parents are doctors. I studied this in university. I do this for work." And, there's things that you adopt and you begin to believe that they are part of who you truly are, when in reality, all of these things are changing. What I do now is not necessarily what I did before or what I'm going to do in the future. Even the physical body changes through time. The way that you're thinking is different now than it was as a child, and then it will be 20 years from now. So we are all usually absorbing these concepts as our own, but in reality, that's not the transcendent self. It's not what is impermanent and unchangeable. All of those things are just things that we have thought to be us, but it is not us. And that is the whole journey of yoga, rediscovering who we are.
Right. So going deeper into one more layer, rather than just describing yourself with these labels that we often assign ourselves that give us some comfort, but yoga is this journey of exploration of who you really are at your core. Great definition. Let's expand that even further. I believe there are 4 classical paths in yoga: Jnana Yoga, Raj Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Karma Yoga. What do each of these terms mean? What are the 4 classical paths and how do they compare with each other?
So to describe these paths, first, let's just say that they all have the same goal. It's similar to, I like to describe it as hiking to a mountaintop. And the peak is the ultimate goal and destination. The peak would be arriving at either the understanding of the self, the understanding of our interconnectedness or Brahman, or oneness. And ultimately, in yoga, the ultimate goal is God realization as well. So really being one with the divine and understanding the divine, having that relationship. So you can arrive to the peak in different ways. Now, all these roads at some point in the mountain, in this imaginary mountain, cross paths, because you cannot just walk one of these paths. They are all interconnected and in some way interdependent as well. But so the great sages have described this knowledge or wisdom of arriving at yoga to be in the paths that you mentioned, right? So Yan Yoga, which loosely translates to the path of knowledge.
Okay.
And it's not intellectual knowledge. It's actually the deep-rooted knowledge of observing ourselves, observing our minds, and beginning to become so aware that we know and we realize, okay, my mind is trying to make me think something that I am not. And so realizing that and using your awareness and your intuition into carving for yourself the path of self-discovery. So that's what Yan Yoga is really, using the knowledge from the ancient texts, from the sages, to develop inner awareness to the point that you observe the mind, the thought patterns, and you are able to develop the knowledge into inner wisdom. And so that's Yan Yoga. Next, we have Karma Yoga, which is the yoga of action. And what this really is, and it's also emphasized greatly in the Bhagavad Gita, is to do your actions or your dharma selflessly. So it's very difficult to do, to not attach to the fruits of our actions, which we call the dharma, to do our dharma without attaching to the fruits. But that is what karma yoga is. It's doing the actions without attaching any benefits necessarily for yourself. And in this way, you don't create further karma. Now, this is a bigger topic, of course, if we're talking about what really karma means. But very briefly, karma is like the different reactions that all of the actions have. And if they come from the ego or a selfish place, then they create more and more entanglements or karmic entanglements. So the whole point of karma yoga is to reduce those karmic entanglements and to learn how to do what we're doing, not just for us, but actually for everyone else, for the humankind, for the divine as well. Ultimately, to offer our actions to the divine. Then we have Bhakti Yoga, which is the path of devotion. And really, Bhakti Yoga is all about love. So, here in the West, we have a different idea and definition of what love is. We tend to think that love is very romantic and something that is limited to a partnership. And we see all these Hollywood films, and that's what we think love is. But in reality, love is unconditional and it transcends any barriers and limitations. So it cannot be exclusive to one person or one relationship. Love itself is the most boundless thing that you can think of. It transcends everything. And so Bhakti Yoga is the path of learning to really love without fear, as one of my teachers says, Swami Chirananda. He describes spiritual life as that, as learning to live without fear. And you can only do that if you really, truly learn how to love. So Bhakti Yoga is to doing whatever you're doing in this life with love and with devotion. Yeah. And next, Raj Yoga. So Raj Yoga and Yan Yoga are somewhat similar because they both have a lot to do with knowledge and the intellect. Raj Yoga is translated into King Yoga or the Royal Yoga. And you know how kings rule their empire. So the whole point of Raj Yoga is for us to learn how to rule ourselves. So very similar to like one of Marcus Aurelius's quotes, even though he's a Stoic, it says, when we learn to realize that we have power over the mind, then there's where we really find strength. And this is kind of the Raj Yoga path as well, where we become the masters of ourselves through actual organized paths. So there's a famous yogic master called Patanjali, who developed the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. And that's a big example of what the Raj Yogis practice. They follow usually Patanjali's Eightfold Path, which is, a step-by-step guide into purification process that would lead to a state of yoga ultimately.
Thank you for that fantastic comparison between the 4 classical paths. Love the analogy about hiking to the top and how you can take 4 separate paths to the top as well. I had a follow-up question when you were talking about karma yoga and talking about how we need to detach ourselves from any kind of gain or pleasure that you might get from your actions. I find that to be very hard. And even if you think about things like donations or giving to charity, for example, to a certain extent, a lot of people do it for either showing that they're doing it, or it gives you a certain amount of happiness and you're able to help people, or like it makes you feel better about yourself. And it's very hard to like decouple that emotion when you're doing something good, when you're actually giving back to society. Have you come across that challenge? Have you noticed people who actually face that difficulty?
Yeah, of course. And that's a great question because there is one clarification. So karma yoga is all about non-attachment, except it is okay to attach to the divine and spirituality. It is normal to feel joy when we are doing good things. It is actually something that is natural to the spiritual path. So in that sense, using your example of a charity, for instance, of course, if you're someone who's doing a charitable act, wanting to have pictures taken or posting it on Instagram, then it becomes something that's attached to ego and egoistic gains. But if you're doing it trying to be anonymous about it, or you're doing it sincerely from the heart, because ultimately that's what it's about, to do it sincerely from the heart with bhakti. So doing your karma yoga, selfless yoga with bhakti or with devotion infused into it, then it becomes very pure. And of course, we're going to have joy from it, but it has a very different vibration. It doesn't fulfill our ego. It is something that we understand to be of divine nature.
It's possible to get joy and pleasure out of it, but it's about the intention and why you're feeling joyous about it.
Exactly.
What is Atma Kriya Yoga? Is it part of one of the classical paths, or is it something else altogether?
So Atma Kriya Yoga is actually a specific type of meditation / Kriya practice. So Kriya means purification. Mm-hmm. And in different traditions, there are different ways to purify, which basically means that we are stirring the pot of what's inside of us. If you want to clean any space, you take the broom and then dust comes out. And then ultimately, finally, it's going to be clean. But that's how we work as well as human beings. If we want to get to a state where the mind is very clear, where we are connected with ourselves, where we can see things outwardly with less bias, less judgment, we have to also do some cleaning, and that's going to bring about some of the dust. So, so then the process is this, where we first observe the things that come to us. At first, the spiritual process can be a little bit hurtful because these emotions will arise that are not pleasant, but they're there to teach us what we still have to transcend. And so once they come to the surface, then there's a process of purification, and that is where the guru comes. So a lot of the times it is very hard to get to this state of very pure mind without the help of a teacher, of a guide and a guru. So the guru has shared the Atma Kriya Yoga, which helps to bring about this dust, so to say, to the surface. And it is actually a secret practice, so I can't talk too much about it. Sure. But it is passed on from guru to disciple to students. So I was initiated to Atma Kriya Yoga through a Swami Chidananda. And his guru is Paramahamsa Vishwananda, who is also my guru now. But he got it actually from his guru, who's someone who's led many Paramahamsas as well. So it's something that's passed on from guru to student.
Okay, very interesting.
Yeah.
While we're dealing with definitions, let's also talk about mindfulness. What is mindfulness? How do you get into a state of mindfulness?
So mindfulness is overused.
Okay.
But it is essential as well to our practice. Mindfulness also means present moment awareness. So those two terms are used kind of intertwined.
Okay.
And it comes from the Vedic teachings as well. So the Vedas are the fundamental texts from which the knowledge of yoga arises. And the Buddha studied with a Vedic priest. So he studied the Vedas. Of course, then he diverted. He went on his own spiritual quest. And he really focused on a specific portion of it. And he observed. He learned to really observe. And that's really what mindfulness is based off of, like an observation, a really deep observation, which is introspective as well. So mindfulness is the awareness that we can develop through knowledge, both yogi knowledge, so introspection of the self that ultimately turns into wisdom, and through different various ways, right? But mindfulness is that open awareness that is non-judgmental, that encompasses all things, and that ultimately helps us to live fully in the present moment. So when we are mindful, it means that our mind is not distracted. It means that we are here right now, fully in the present moment.
What are some of the benefits that you notice of mindfulness? Of course, you mentioned some, but like some of the benefits that people can start seeing in their own lives when they start practicing mindfulness and make it a part of the daily routine. How can that help them as they go about their day?
And that's why mindfulness is so popular now.
Yeah.
Because especially in big cities, everyone is so distracted. We have tons of things in our head, distractions at work and our technology, all sorts of things. So the mind becomes what we say clouded with all these thoughts. And all of these thoughts, most of them are from the past or from the future. So what that means is that the mind is not in the present moment anymore. And having the mind focusing on the past or the future can create a lot of anxiety and worry and stress. So one of the biggest benefits of practicing mindfulness or being present right now in this moment is to reduce anxiety, to reduce stress, and to really fully learn how to enjoy what you have right now. And ultimately, with a deeper practice, you will also arrive at this state of abundance. Because once you learn to be grateful for what you have right now, for what is in this present moment, then the practice of gratitude turns into love. You begin really finding joy in the beautiful morning light, in the color of the Legos, in the smells around you, in all sorts of things. And that really creates a sense of abundance in your life.
Can you provide an idea of like the perfect day? So from morning to night in this busy city, what are some habits, exercises, routines that people can start incorporating to their daily life, right from when they get up to when they go to bed, that can hopefully make a positive difference in their lives?
Well, so this has to be something that, can be achievable, one,
Yeah. Yes.
that works with your schedule. So I'm just talking, through experience of myself and what I have found that works in a busy schedule. Everything comes with sacrifice. So that's one thing you have to commit to. And the sacrifice in this case can mean waking up early to do your morning practices, for instance.
Yeah.
So one of the most important things, and I've asked many monks in all traditions, Buddhist monks, lamas, I've asked Vedic priests, different spiritual teachers, what one thing they would suggest for you to do in order to cultivate like a state of inner peace. And they all say sadhana. And in my experience, sadhana is also the most important thing. And what that means is practice. So sadhana is a daily practice, really a daily spiritual practice. So even if you are someone that may not in this moment believe so much in the transcendent self or the Atma and all those things, you can take it as something that helps you feel good, like from deep inside. So a spiritual practice can be not using your phone when you wake up. It can be instead of using your phone, getting into a deep silence for a few hours, an hour, 2, 3, meditating. Doing a japa practice with it, which is a repetition of a specific mantra. Those are in the Vedic tradition. So in the yogic path, those are some things you can do. Meditation, your japa practice, asana, which are the postures. You can do some kriyas or purification. Sometimes those include self-massage, using specific types of oils, things like that. So figuring out your sadhana, your daily sadhana that you want to commit to, that you're going to try to do at the same time every day. So that's the most important thing. Coming up with your spiritual practice that you can do daily. And then throughout the day, just try to practice a lot of mindfulness. So when whatever you're doing, try to become more and more aware of where the actions are coming from. Are they coming from your ego? Or maybe slowly, they might be coming from your heart. So just try to act in a way that feels good to your true self. So in this whole process, it's important to be very honest with yourself. So throughout the day, practice mindfulness. Then I would suggest taking a few breaks during the day to kind of recenter. So these could be very simple things. Using the breath is one of the easiest ways to calm the nervous system down, to develop a clear mind. So you can just sit down, take 5-10 minute break, just observe the breath or practice specific breath meditations. One of the easiest ones is alternate nostril breathing, in which there's different mudras, but you can use a Vishnu mudra where you bring your index and middle finger down, and then you will use the ring finger and your thumb.
Okay.
And you exhale, close the right nostril, inhale through the left, close the left, exhale through the right, inhale through the right, close the right, exhale left. And you move like that.
Okay.
And this helps to balance the energy in the body. And it's very easy in this.
Sorry, how long do you do that for?
It depends.
Okay.
5 minutes to begin with is fine. And yeah, so then you would take a few breaks during the day, ideally. And then also watch what you're feeding yourself. And that doesn't just mean what you're eating. You feed yourself in many ways, in what you see, what you speak, what you hear. So just make sure that everything that's coming into your senses is something that is going to help you, instead of creating more trouble and anxiety. So instead of maybe listening to the news all day, maybe turn it off and maybe read something spiritual. And instead of, listening to your friends complain, maybe you can try to shift the conversation. And if that doesn't work, maybe step aside or
get a new friend.
Yeah. Or make the decision to get new friends.
Yeah.
So developing that awareness as well, it's part of mindful awareness, what you're feeding yourself. And then before bed, it's also important to have an evening practice, because that'll influence how you sleep, and how you sleep is super important for many reasons.
What is the evening practice? I'm sorry.
It can be many things as well, depending on your time. I would suggest probably something to relax, to calm down. So you could do either a short yoga nidra practice, which is a guided meditation where you lay down. You could do any guided meditation that you like. Nowadays, there's many apps. I work with a few. I work with Aura Health app and with Voss Health app. There's many options.
Yeah.
You could do some reading as well, maybe of a spiritual text or any book that you like. So same as the morning, I strongly suggest you have a specific sadhana that's non-negotiable, that you do. Try to do it realistic. So maybe start with 15 minutes, then go to 30 and so on. But there's different things you can do, like what I'm mentioning. Maybe take a warm bath, just do something relaxing and do your sadhana. So morning and evening sadhana. And then just throughout the day, just be aware. Be aware of what you're doing and how you're receiving energy.
Fantastic plan. I think there's a lot of actionable little things that people can start adding into the daily schedule that can make a massive difference, I'm sure. I also want to get your thoughts on some specific exercises. You already mentioned a few of them. You had mentioned in a previous interview that you had started meditating 10 years ago as a means to lower these anxiety attacks that you were dealing with at that point. So for people who are often prone to anxiety attacks, who often get anxious or stressed, is there something specific they can do in that moment that can hopefully help them and calm them down?
Yeah. So, of course, I have to say, if you're having anxiety attacks, go to a psychologist. That's important to say as well, have the clinical background. But in the yogic tradition, in my experience, the things that really help to slow down the mind then is the breath. It's the thing that's always going to be there with you. It's the easiest thing to access. And slow down the breath. When you slow down the breath, that works directly with the mind process as well, the thought process. And the mind will become calmer and calmer, quieter and quieter. So sit down. If it's possible to walk outside, have some fresh air. Depending on where you live, if it's possible to have contact with nature, that's really helpful. But in the specific moment, just connect with the breath.
Okay.
So something that you could do is, for instance, slow down, begin to take a deep breath in. And maybe first you will bring the shoulders up towards the ears and then exhale and release. And in this way, you are also releasing the stress from the body. So do that a few times. And then just practice ocean breathing, which comes with the sound of the breath as well. So there's no constriction of the throat. You're just making the breath a little bit more audible. So it would sound like this. And just connect with your own breath. Mm-hmm. Adding the sound will help with your ears being involved. And then just slow down. But the only thing that is going to help you transcend this anxiety is bringing the mind to the present moment. Because anxiety, as I mentioned before, arises from something from the past or the future. And until we learn to really appreciate where we are right now, then anxiety is always going to be there. Eventually, with more practice, what you can do in moments where you're having anxiety is one, you're going to get better at recognizing the signs before you get into an anxiety attack, for instance. So you'll be able to target it from that point. And you can start to include mantras. So if you have a spiritual practice, then maybe instead of just focusing on the breath, you can repeat your mantra. Or you can repeat an affirmation. Things like, it's okay, I am strong, I am divine, everything's okay. Things like that. And with more and more practice, connection with the self, then anxiety is going to eventually reduce quite substantially.
Thank you for sharing that. It's such a powerful exercise because breath work is easily accessible to everyone. They can do it at any moment and such a powerful tool. So thank you for sharing that. Let's pivot slightly. One of your primary goals is spreading awareness about spirituality, about wellness and yoga. I think in modern times, there's this tension between science and spirituality. People who think they're intellectual, who follow science, scientific rigor, they feel like if you follow both science and spirituality, it's hypocrisy. They're viewed as mutually exclusive. So let's stop with that. Do you think there's a tension in people's minds today between science and spirituality that you can't follow both?
I think that is getting, the gap is getting more and more thin.
Okay.
The Dalai Lama actually has done quite an extensive amount of work with different scientists. So he's trying to bridge the gap between spirituality and science. What, in my opinion, is yet to be realized is that yoga, for instance, is actually very scientific. The sages already knew this because, of course, they had very, very advanced knowledge of not only the mind, but the whole body. Mm-hmm. But they didn't really care to talk about the science, because for them, the most important thing is the goal of self-realization, ultimately moksha, which is liberation of the cycle of samsara, or birth and death. So much more elevated things than understanding the physical body.
Yeah.
So if you are someone that needs a scientific proof, then I would suggest, experiment. That's what science is all about. Trying something out and testing it out. So do it for yourself. Experience is the best teacher. So try out different yoga classes, different meditations. If you find that it helps you, then keep doing it. What other proof do you need? The best proof is what you can experience yourself and the change that it creates in your own self. And I mean, there's many research that's coming out about the deeper spiritual practices, even the mantra chants, and proving that all these things actually really help. But why are you going to wait until someone comes up with the solution or the proof? Just try it for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a great sales pitch to people who are not convinced. I hope they're listening. Hope they're getting convinced. And you're right, because every so often you come across these new terms that get really popular, especially in the Bay Area, in the tech industry, where things like mindfulness, which obviously stem from these yogic principles. And then you spoke about yoga nidra, which is now known as like non-sleep deep rest.
Yeah.
So they've got these scientific terms that they have now found for these concepts and ideas that have been existing for so many years. And I'm always fascinated to know how they discovered it. Like so many thousands of years ago, they already perfected it. And now science is catching up in a sense and putting scientific terms to it. So I find that very, very fascinating. Let's talk about diets. Your parents are doctors. Your mom used to be very particular about what diet you eat, what food you eat. And as a result, you grew up with this intuition around what food is good for you, what you put into your body. On a trip to Thailand, you had an ill-fated shrimp pad thai, and that made you give up on meat altogether, and you became vegetarian from that day. Today, I believe you follow a Sattvic diet. So let's expand that definition. What is a Sattvic diet? What are the main ingredients? What food makes up a Sattvic diet?
Okay, so a Sattvic diet comes from the term Sattvic, which is one of the 3 gunas, and these are like different energies that pervade our actions. So there's tamasic, rajasic, and sattvic. So one goes from, in diet, for example, a tamasic diet would be someone who's eating very non-nutritious food, like everything fried, tons of sodas, all these sweets, things that really are not nutritious. Then rajasic could be maybe someone who eats meat, has veggies, drinks alcohol, but is a little more
moderate.
Yeah, more moderate. And then a sattvic diet comes when you value the energy that is within the food as well as the primordial substance of nourishment. The sattvic diet is something that's suggested by spiritual teachers and the guides and the gurus. And it is a vegetarian diet. There is also no substances used, no alcohol, no onions, and no garlic. And these have to do with the energy that the food has in itself. So I can't say that I'm 100% sattvic because I travel quite a lot. And sometimes, I'm in places where I'm in a restaurant and the food has maybe cheese. So I eat cheese. I'm not going to be an extremist either where, I'm going to just not eat the whole day if I don't find the specific sattvic plate. But in general, that's what I try to pursue, like food that has higher vibration. So things that are very fresh, which is also part of the sattvic diet, very fresh food, vegetarian food, vegan mostly. And it also includes seeing the food as an offering to the divine, knowing that everything that is in this world is not ours. Everything that is in this world arises from one divine source, from one thing. And it goes back into that one thing. So even the process of offering the food itself is from the divine. It has this divine energy. So that's also part of Sattvic lifestyle, being aware and recognizing that as well.
Why not onion and garlic? This is I guess a Jain diet is the same as a Sattvic diet because they don't eat onion and garlic as well. What is it about those fruits? The vibrations are that weak.
Well, it is said that these foods make you feel angry. So that's another thing. Like, there's no scientific research, but test it out for yourself.
Has it made you angry?
You know, I can't say like I know 100% because I haven't had a controlled experiment, for instance. But I do know that if I have food that is too spicy, sometimes that could be with ginger or with garlic too, then I get more irritated. So I do know that there's a correlation. But that's the science behind it. It tends to make you angrier. And in the spiritual path, anger is one of the things that we really work to transcend. Yeah.
What are some of the benefits of Sattvic diet you've noticed ever since you switched to it? Did you start noticing like these noticeable changes in your life?
Yes. I can't say no because yes. So I've been vegetarian since 2016. But it was this year that I left onion and garlic.
Okay.
And this year alone, I have noticed I have changed a lot myself. I've become much more serious about my spirituality and much more aware also of why I do certain things, why certain things still bother me. So very aware of my mind and how it works. And in terms of energy levels, I am feeling great. I'm feeling very energized. I'm getting good sleep. I feel light. And I think that feeling of having the body feel light is also important because it just helps you to be more in a state of mind that is clearer.
Sounds very interesting. I would love to explore it even further. Multiple times in previous questions, you have mentioned the divine. So let's tackle that.
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask that.
So many people wonder about this big question. What is the divine? What is out there? Who is the creator? What is God? So many religions have been based on this. They've been trying to answer this one question. So I have to get your take on it. What is the divine? What is your interpretation of it?
Well, I'm not going to claim to have the answer to the question that has been around for the eternity. But the divine is incomprehensible. So even if I attempted to explain it, I can't fully explain it myself. It is something that transcends the limits of the intellectual, rational mind. But we do have the gift as a human being to have a glimpse into what that divine essence is. And that's really what bhakti is, the unconditional love. So I define the divine as that which is unconditionally loving. And it is so loving that you just can't even fathom this energy. It is only sometimes in meditation that I have had the glimpse into what is beyond the mind. So actually in 2018, I was in South Honduras in an island called La Isla del Tigre, sitting down during sunset. And I sat down for meditation. I didn't really think much of it. I was just sitting there. My ex-boyfriend was there with me at the time. We're good friends now, Carl. And he was chilling. I was meditating. And I started to think about the concept of Aham Brahmasmi, which means I am the divine, or I am Brahman. And I did this meditation that came intuitively to myself. And I got into a state of samadhi. And samadhi is a state of absorption. So it transcends our mind. In a state of samadhi, you are not aware of the body. You are not aware of where you are. You are not aware of yourself. It's just something that is unexplainable. But in the samadhi, I experienced this combination of bliss, but also complete tranquility, complete harmony. And ultimately, it is the one thing that I know that was true. So you know how everything can be debatable. But that was not. That was the thing that I know it was truth. There is nothing else that I have experienced with that much certainty except that. And that was a little glimpse into what the divine is to me. And even that moment really has sparked my entire life after that. In the sense that, I'm walking further and further in this path into not just the understanding of the divine, but more so just the devotion that comes after it, like the love that you develop to the divine source, the creator. And it's not just the creator. The divine is all qualities. It's the quality of creation, of destruction, of sustainer. It is everything. In this state of samadhi, what I experienced and understood is that everything was there. But at the same time, it didn't matter because it wasn't defined. It was formless, it was undefined. But at the same time, it was absolute. Yeah.
Powerful. Yeah, very powerful. Wow. Well, I don't have a follow-up question to that. That's such a great memory. Thank you for sharing that, firstly. I can't even imagine what that experience or that feeling is like. And to be able to even get close to it, or even reach that state, you have to obviously put in the work first, and then hopefully you can achieve that level of blissfulness like you're tranquility described.
Well, I'll cut you off there just because I don't want to forget this. But one thing that's important to know is that out of all these different paths of yoga, for the time where we live right now, which is a time of a lot of chaos, a lot of distraction, the easiest thing that you can practice to cultivate this love is the path of bhakti or of devotion. So just growing your capacity to love. And we've all experienced love in our lives. It comes in many forms. It comes as motherly love, as friendly love, as a crush, as a fatherly love, different types of love. So with the path of bhakti, you learn to kind of break down those limits as to, you can love in this way or the other, but know that love is free and limitless and unconditional. And that's going to get you close to this state of divinity or understanding the divine, who we truly are, because we are this transcendent love.
Yeah, beautifully put. Well, love is always the answer. I'm a big believer in the power of love, the force that it has. And there's so much more to it. I also want to get your thoughts on Honduras, your home country. I believe when you started practicing, there were only 2 yoga studios in Honduras, and now over time, interest has increased, of course, with your help as well. I want to touch upon this experience of introducing yoga into a new country altogether, in contrast to like a country like India, where yoga has been part of the culture for thousands of years.
Yeah.
What lessons have you learned from watching yoga develop? Has it taught you any new perspectives, any insights, or maybe even opened your eyes to some kind of obstacles that exist in the way, or the way people have reacted to certain aspects of yoga? Have you learned anything new from this experience?
Yes. So I went to Honduras in 2018 after my official yoga training, my first training in India. And as you mentioned, there were some studios around, but it was still very new. It's something that wasn't talked about much. I think people were starting to get familiar with the term, especially because of social media. But I began with asana, so with postures. And that was very well received. Now, the postures I was offering then, most of the classes were very challenging. So for the Honduran crowd at that moment, that was something that they liked and they resonated with. In the beginning, I did not focus so much in meditation, more so the asana practice. And, asana, in the way that I teach it, I still mention things that are going to be helpful in your daily life, like spiritual concepts that can be used in your daily life, like awareness of the mind, cultivating gratitude, all these things. But I was very focused on the asana practice. Then COVID came. And with COVID, it wasn't because I wanted to shift, but it forced me to shift because people were coming to me asking for meditation.
Yeah.
Because everyone, of course, was going through these mental challenges. Men were very stressed because usually they're the householders. And so they were stressed. They were, having difficulties with their jobs. They were unsure. So I shifted to meditation. And that's where I really deepened my practice and where I really began to understand what yoga is all about. And it is all about the mind. Even the asana is practiced just to help you come to a state of comfort in the body so that you can be still, so that you can meditate and ultimately have the experiences of deep samadhis. So, and after COVID, people thankfully, have a much open understanding of what yoga and meditation are, and they're much more willing to meditate and to, try to work in their mental health as well, which is what they relate yoga with. So in Honduras, it's also in that space right now where people are starting to meditate. Still, some of the deeper philosophical teachings are not openly taught, but that applies everywhere, even here. To that, I feel like you can't really openly, forcefully teach it. Like someone has to gravitate to that. Once you've had an established practice in asana and meditation, you're starting to feel, oh, I'm actually doing some progress. My mind's actually calmer. I'm feeling more peace. I'm feeling more love. I want to get deeper into it. Then you can go and, study the teachings more in depth.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's been my experience. And this June, I visited Honduras with Swami Chidananda. And we hosted a few events, hosted a retreat, and people were very open-hearted, very kind, very loving, very curious. And so I think it's in a very good space right now where especially the younger crowd wants to feel more belonging, happiness, wants to feel in harmony. So it's a good space. It's in a good space right now. And yoga is really helping the community there.
In general, do you find like small places, small islands, for example, do you find it easier to introduce a new idea or like sometimes are they closed off to like these Western ideas that are coming through?
Well, so Honduras has a mainland and the islands as well. I visit both.
Yeah.
In the mainland is where I've hosted most of my events and retreats and classes. And people there are very happy. It's easy to get people to come to class. Now in the islands, actually, it's quite different. I've tried to host several asana classes there, yoga or meditation, and it's hard to get people to come. And last time I was there, the retreats are a different story because people from different countries come to the retreat specifically for that. But I was speaking with the locals about that specific thing. Like, why do you think the locals don't want to come to yoga? And they said, well, we already have the beach. We already have a very relaxed life. We go to work, but then we come, we see the sunset. We have our friends. It's an island. So you have close circles, the communities right there. And those are also important things in your inner peace. So that was an interesting thing to me. Like, okay, you're right. Like sometimes in different areas, people tend to be already in a more relaxed state of mind.
Yeah, you're right. One of the externalities of staying in big cities like this is you probably have a bigger requirement for yoga in your life. If you're already at peace in the island, already chilling, probably less of a requirement. I want to contrast that with your experience in India. So you have spent a considerable amount of time in Rishikesh in India. How would you describe Rishikesh to someone who's never been there?
Rishikesh is in the Himalayas, right? So in the foothills of the Himalayas and the Ganges. So it's a beautiful place. And the energy there is quite different than, let's say, in Delhi.
Yeah.
But what's special about Rishikesh and also places like Mysore, which I visited recently as well, is that a lot of the yogi masters have lived there or they have come from these places. And so that is in the atmosphere in a way. Like it's just an energy that you can feel, especially in a place like Rishikesh, where there's so many ashrams. And Mysore as well, it's a city that has so many yoga studios, so many amazing teachers. Actually, the lineage of Hatha, Ashtanga, the yoga asanas that we know now come from Mysore. So in that way, they're very, very special places, very different to any other place. I've also noticed, though, that the vast majority of people don't practice yoga in India.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It might be because when you have something in your face, maybe naturally the tendency is to, you want what you don't have. The mind thinks it wants what it doesn't have. So if it's there, it rejects it. But I know that the younger crowd is also more and more gravitating back towards it. But compared to any other place that I've been to in the world, that's special to me about India. It's just this spiritual energy. For me, it's like my spiritual home. It's a lot of the major religions come from this area, from the Indus Valley, the teachings of the Vedas. And it's just very powerful in that way. And also people that I've encountered, no matter how, economically challenged they seem to be, they're happy. They want to share with you. They even invite you to have tea, and just people are very kind, very gentle. Yeah.
You spoke about this spiritual energy in the air. And of course, many people who live and grow up in India, often, you're right, maybe you tune it out, it becomes like white noise. I don't know what works. But like you mentioned it, there's this book, My Journey Home by Radhanath Swami. He spoke about the same idea as well.
Mm-hmm.
How do you build up this sensor, this radar? How do you get in tune with this energy that you spoke about, this spiritual energy? Because I feel like we're missing out, because I might walk through a temple and for us, it might just be just another tourist, like a landmark, you know what I mean? Like it's just an experience. But I feel like there's more to be gained, but somehow we have blocked it off. Is there a way to open ourselves up to this vibe or this energy?
Yes. And it's all about what we've talked about this whole time.
Yes.
It's important not to force things as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more that we force, the more resistance there will be naturally. So if you do have the legitimate curiosity to learn more about what the masters have taught, the ancient yogis, the gurus, to learn more about spirituality, if you feel like that's something that you want in this point in your life, then that's already a door that's opening. So there's many ways that you can walk into that new room. And it depends on what's available to you then and there. And so you can choose. But my advice would be to try to choose classes led by teachers whom you perceive embody the teachings. So there are many teachers now, yoga, meditation, spiritual, all sorts of teachers. And you can be your own judge. And you gravitate towards, in a way, where you are right now. Or also maybe what you want to be, where you want to be. So just try to have that be your guide. Like, is your teacher actually embodying the teachings? What are they transmitting to you? Because in the end, you can read many books, you can visit the temples, knowing the history behind it. But if you don't have an inner experience, then it's very difficult to open up to this higher energy. You have to feel it as well. And that's the way. Through a teacher who's embodying it, then you can also absorb some of that energy and it will begin to spark within you. The role of a teacher is exactly that, to light others' candles. We all have these candles that are already lit within us. It's just about you seeing that as well. And the teacher helps you to see that. And it helps for your candle to shine very bright.
Beautifully put. Can't put it in any better words. Before we move into final questions, I would love it if you can interpret what you've built with the Lego and what do you think these masterpieces are.
Well, I like this one because of the eyes.
Yeah, it's a finishing touch. Attention to detail.
It makes me think of some sort of modern bird /
That's what I'm going for.
Slash, the eyes are always very symbolic, of course. It means willingness to learn and to open your eye of wisdom.
Okay.
I'm not sure what to make out of this.
What does it resemble the closest?
This makes me think of an antenna, so of receiving maybe a message.
Okay.
And then I just did a little tower. I did play with the colors so that it would kind of harmonize.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's going upwards towards the sky. So maybe channeling the energy from above.
Look at how beautiful and symbolic your creation is. And look at the mumbo jumbo that I've done, the nonsense that I've built on the side. This is embarrassing at this stage. So move it away. But fantastic with the Lego. Let's move into some of our final questions. What are some books, movies, role models that have strongly influenced you in your life?
It's a hard question because
Always.
everyone can be your teacher and your guide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So some books, let's see. About 12 years ago, I read Many Lives, Many Masters by Dr. Brian Weiss, who's a clinical psychologist, but this book was incredible. It talks about his experience with his patients going into past lives. And at the time, I was very much into science. I was reading a ton about astrophysics, space, psychology. I was really intrigued with the science itself. And this book kind of acted like a bridge between science, but also something else.
Yeah.
So that book was definitely very important in my path. Then I would say the Dhammapada, which is a beautiful book in Buddhism. It's written in short little stotras or short paragraphs. And it's a book filled with beautiful wisdom, and it's just very beautifully written as well. Also the Vedas. So specifically, the Vedas are the ancient texts. They're huge books, but they've been narrowed into the Upanishads, which hold the main teachings of the Vedas. There's a specific one called the Mandukya Upanishad, which really spoke to me as well. It talks about the divine and describes the divine in terms of vibration as well. A part of it describes, the Om and what the Om means. And it's just something that really struck me. Mm-hmm. Also, Marcus Aurelius, who was an emperor, and I just love his story, how deep his meditations are. So specifically, the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius is another book that I'd suggest. As you mentioned, The Journey Home Right Now by Radhanath Swami. I had the pleasure and the grace to meet him in person recently in New York City. And he is someone that really transmits just this divine energy of what a saint really is. And so reading his book, knowing him as well, that he really practices what he preaches, and just hearing his journey is very inspirational as well. It really helps you to see what it is to have bhakti, to have devotion. Yeah.
I think that's a great list. And I was similarly quite, I found the book Many Lives, Many Masters also quite thought-provoking. And you're right, it did serve as some sort of a bridge. Very fascinating book. On an Instagram post, you once shared 7 tips to a happy life. So I'm going to ask you a slightly unfair question. Can you provide a small teaser into small tips that can help people live a happier life?
These tips are constantly changing and evolving. The most essential thing is, one, to know that happiness is not outside. So realize that nothing will bring you happiness. Happiness is already within you. So just know that. And happiness is also related to a sense of inner peace. So if there is a lot of chaos going on, then you can't really be happy. You have to have some peace. And this peace comes from developing your inner strength and the power of the mind. So I said it earlier in the podcast, this quote from Marcus Aurelius, like, once you realize that you have power over the mind, then you find strength.
Yeah.
And that is really important in the spiritual path. Like, understand that we don't have to be controlled by our thoughts. Sometimes this is something that tricks us, that we think, oh no, I am this way because that's all that my mind is thinking. And we tend to fall into self-judgment and criticism. But knowing that, we actually can have control over the thoughts. So having that in mind. And so with that, more practical, actual tips would be your sadhana. Commit to your sadhana. Commit to a spiritual practice every day. And you're going to have patience. That's the sacrifice of the spiritual practice. It's not something that you can get, in a drink or in a snack, which now a lot of the foods are even promoting that. Even candles, I bought one the other day that says enlightenment. With this candle, you can get closer to enlightenment. And that's not true. So there's sacrifice, which means you have to commit, you have to do it every day. It's going to take time, so you're going to have to be patient. But filter what you're receiving with the 5 senses, filter what you're seeing, what you're doing, who you're spending your time with, and commit to a daily sadhana or spiritual practice. And if you like to go deeper, then seek talks from spiritual masters and teachers who embody happiness and inner peace.
Fantastic. Okay. Last 2 questions. What would you like your legacy to be? What would you like to be remembered for?
Well, this is difficult because I'm trying to detach from the ego. So answering that in that way would mean that I would want, my ego to have some lingering there. But really my purpose is to, I would just like for everyone to have the opportunity to experience what I did that day in 2018, and that's samadhi. And the way to get there is through practice, through devotion as well, through knowing that there is something more, that is something greater. So my purpose is just to share the possibility that there is something greater there, that is love, and that you can feel that within yourself as well. That's my purpose.
I think that's a great purpose. And just you sharing that experience here today itself, even for me, it's been like such an, it's made me so curious about just wanting to explore it even further. I'm sure it's such a powerful, powerful memory. Final question. What do you think is the meaning of life? Paola Cruz.
Well, I try not to ponder too much about this because who knows what, the actual meaning of life is, if there is one. For me, it's all about being in the moment and enjoying the gift of being in a human experience, which means that you have the capacity to have these beautiful experiences of happiness, of love, of sharing. So as you walk, around your journey of life, just try to be selfless and try to, instead of thinking, what can I get today for myself, think maybe, what can I give?
Mm-hmm.
And then life becomes very abundant.
That's a great meaning. Be in the moment, enjoy the gift of life. Can't go wrong with that. Paola, thank you so much. If people want to connect with you online or in person, or sign up for one of your classes, come for one of your events, where can they do so?
So you can go to my Instagram. That might be the easiest way. Practice with Paola, Paola. And I also have a website, practicewithpaola.com. You'll find information about several online events. I'm just moving to New York City now, so hopefully I'll have a regular schedule of in-person classes soon. In the meantime, I have pop-ups, I have online gatherings, and retreats as well. And the retreats are beautiful. They really help you to have a foundation, a deep foundation of all the tools that you need in order to get to, start this journey or keep going on this journey of achieving happiness. That's Journey Within Retreats. But all of it is on the links on my Instagram page.
Perfect. The website is the place. We're glad to have you in New York City now. Paola, thank you so much for a great conversation.
Thank you so much for inviting me.